Your feelings. Oh boy, that's a big one, right? Like you think somebody does something and it hurts your feelings. You stand convicted on something, that's your feelings. You have thoughts on things, that's your thoughts. You hold very true to them. And you have that right to do because that's your perspective, right? Your perspective is your reality. Here, however, we're going to talk about it today because your feelings and your thoughts are not facts. They are not facts. So, welcome to episode 35 of the Positivity Xperience. Let's chat. Check it out. Hey everybody, and happy Thanksgiving. This is the third time I have said this. It is not Thanksgiving, although every day should be thankful. No, my God, it's not Memorial Day either. Happy Labor Day. Oh my. Okay. Well, this is going to be an interesting episode. Happy Labor Day weekend. It is Sunday. In my brain, it's Monday, but then it feels like Saturday. It's this whole thing. So I am super happy about it being the unofficial start to fall. I am so excited. And I know if you guys follow me on Instagram or TikTok or any of that, you guys know how obsessed I am with fall. I love fall. I love 60, 65 degree days, 45 degree nights, crispness, coolness, change of leaves. Oh my God, it's my favorite time of the year. So I, for one, am extremely happy about it. And that is my feeling. So that's going to go into today's episode on feelings and thoughts. And this is a really important topic to cover because I think so many people fall into the line of, somebody needs to think like me. Someone needs to feel like me. Well, it's not a fact. Thoughts and feelings are not facts. They never have been. They're never going to be. Are they real to you? They are. They are your perception. It becomes problematic, however, when you start thinking that the other person has to see it from you, from your perspective. Yes. Is it a beautiful part of a relationship to say, okay, I believe this, but let me talk to somebody else who believes differently? And let's listen to each other. Let's hear each other. Let's get perspective. Doesn't mean you have to change your mind, but it's nice. So this way you're not only seeing it from your perspective, because that's going to be that's a very short-minded way of thinking, that your way is the only way and your way is the right way and it's this way. And if anybody doesn't do it that way, it's wrong. It's kind of like if you're like, why would somebody put glasses in the bottom shelf of the dishwasher and you throw a fit about it? Why do you care? It doesn't matter that they're doing it different. It's not that big of a deal. If it's not going to matter in 5 years, please don't spend 5 minutes on it. It's really not that deep. That's a control issue. And just because you're like, this is common sense, no, maybe it isn't. And who cares if it is? Just let it be what it is. Everything doesn't require you to correct, right? And so going into this feeling state is so important right now because the only way in which you can process your feelings is to sit with them. Right? And I mean, my God, you see it all over. I told you guys, do not doom scroll. Do not go on something I try to avoid Facebook. I just post there and get off. I post and leave because I just can't. It's just too much, too much. But let's say that you're on Facebook and you see a post that maybe you don't agree with, or there's something, and then you go deep diving down into the comments, that's doom scrolling. And then now you're pissed off and you're like, what's wrong with these people? Can't they see things? Why or what? Just because you see something one way doesn't mean that everybody has to see it that way. That's the acceptance piece. That's the ego piece that says, hey, check yourself for a minute. And the problem is you're looking at everybody else saying, what's wrong with them? Why can't they see it this way? Why can't they feel this way? Can't they see? Can't they validate? Well, what about you? It's not anybody else's responsibility to make you feel whole. Okay? So let's break this down a little bit because this is where you see a lot of problems in relationships, and not just love relationships, friendships, things like that. This is not expecting you out of people, because your feeling with that is, let's say, and I've used this example before, you call somebody when they're not feeling well, you've dropped chicken soup off at their door, you've sent them flowers, you just call every day, you're checking in on them because you feel empathy. Great. Love that about you. Well, now you're a little under the weather. Allergies are bothering you. You're not feeling all that grand. And the same people know because for whatever reason you posted it on Facebook. Please don't post on Facebook every time you get sick. It's not that deep. But so you've posted it and, people have been like, oh, feel better. But nobody's really called in. And, you're like, well, that kind of hurts my feelings. Why would they do that? That's wrong. Why is it wrong? Why is it wrong? Just because you're like, well, because people are supposed to have empathy. People have empathy, but just because they don't show it your way doesn't mean that they're wrong. Now, again, this is where the communication piece will come into play. Someone is not going to automatically just know your feelings and give you respect for them. You can't just assume somebody be like, well, don't they know? No, they don't know. This is where communication becomes your best friend. You will not like it because it can be a little confrontational, and some people don't like confrontation. But if you don't like the confrontation, you're going to sit home and stay up till 2:00 in the morning and try to think why nobody is your friend, which may not be the case at all. So this is where, let's say, maybe not when you're feeling sick, but maybe shortly thereafter. You're like, hey, you know what? Like, I was feeling some kind of way because I don't know. I just, and it's not I did this, so you have to do this. It's literally saying what your perspective of your feelings is, right? And so you say, hey, remember like last week when I wasn't feeling all that great, like kind of hurt my feelings because I felt like, oh my gosh, like, nobody kind of reached out to me. And I guess I'm so used to reaching out that I just assume everybody else is going to do it. And, it just kind of made me feel weird and just a little lonely. Okay. So now the other person goes, oh my, I'm so sorry that you felt that way. Like, wow, well, you know what? Little Johnny had all these lacrosse games that I absolutely could not miss. And it just such and such happened. And even though technically they really don't have to give you the whole breakdown, like it's not up to them to make you more comfortable with what happened. But my point to that is you being able to understand that you have to be able to say how you feel and what your thoughts are. However, when doing so, don't think somebody's going to go, oh, you're right. Yep, you're right. You're valid. And you are valid in your feelings, but just because you feel some kind of way doesn't mean that your job is to make everybody think and feel the way you do. Facts carry no emotion. Now, that's hard for a lot of people to get. But like today is September 5th. That's it. It's just the 5th. It's not an up day. It's not a bad day. Situations are. They do not carry emotion. Now, we attach that emotion because are we close to the situation? Are we close to the argument? Are we close to the tragedy? Are we close to somebody hurting our feelings? Yes. Okay. And that's why, here in the States, and I assume it's like this pretty much everywhere, but, we have a lot of crime here, just in the United States. And, I was in Iceland a couple years back and they have very limited crime. They just do. Especially comparingly, that's not it, comparingly. And so if something tragic happens there, people are probably going to be like, oh my gosh, and people are going to get involved and the mayor gets involved and you're like, wow, that, here. And it's really kind of it's just what your body is conditioned to. A lot of us will see something on TV and let's say it's a shooting or it's something like that. And you think, oh my gosh, that's awful. And, you carry the empathy. Maybe it's, you watch the trial, you do all of that. And then guess what? You go about your life because that's kind of what you got to do. Right. And I say that because that's where it becomes important for you to differentiate what your feelings are to what the situation and what the fact is. Because haven't you ever heard when people say there's 3 sides to every story? My side, your side, and the truth. Because that is the true statement. Because if me and you look at the same picture, I might focus on one thing, you might focus on another. Who's right? Neither one of us. We're both right, but neither one of us are wrong. And so understanding that if you're in a breakup, one person might see it one way, one person might see it the other way. Who's right? Who's wrong? You are both right in the way that you see it. I'm not saying how it's perceived to you and how they perceive it. But the problematic part is where you are hell-bent determined for the other person to validate your perspective. They really don't have to do that. Okay, now, in relationships, people can't just walk around being like, I don't have to validate your feelings, and you're not going to validate my feelings. I am saying that's why you have to be able to communicate. So you and I may disagree politically, but I can sit down and have a conversation without losing my mind and cutting people off and freaking the hell out on, oh my God, what's wrong with you? Like I literally could sit down and have a conversation with somebody who thinks different from me politically. And I can listen and I can say, oh, that's your perspective. Yeah, I see that's how that aligns with you. And wow, okay, well and then, having a, excuse me, goodness, having a conversation in it. Now listen, they do tell you early on, don't talk about religion, don't talk about politics. These are things that they say, please don't talk about because people get very passionate about what their feelings are. And That's why you also have to be very careful on who you just spring your feelings and thoughts onto. And communication in that is going to be key. So an example of that is the 5 languages of love. So you have 5 love languages. You have acts of service, which is actually my number 1. And do me a favor, don't just go online and take the test. Get the little book and read the book and you do the side. You don't do it together at the same time. You do the test, fold up your paper, let the other person read the book, do the test, then you guys switch it. And what you think is your number 1 love language may be totally different. Mine's acts of service. So you can bring me flowers all day long. Great. Love you. Thank you. That's lovely. But you doing shit around the house and outside, oh my God, that's super sexy. Now that may not be yours. So there's acts of service. There's quality time. That's self-explanatory. There's there's personal touch, right? That's not just sex. That's also just maybe holding hands. Maybe you need that affection. There's personal touch. Words of affirmation. Words of affirmation actually is my husband's number 1. It's not mine. You could say, oh my gosh, lovely. That's my number 4. It's fine. But he likes to hear hey, that's a great job. And he doesn't need it. And I'm not going to turn around and say it every time he opens the door. Great job. Great job. Come on now. I'm not going to do that. And then there's gifts, and gifts is my husband and I's last one. It's great. You bring me something cool. Thank you. Appreciate it. But it's really not that deep. And so, but going into that love language, people start to say, okay, let's say acts of service is my number 1. And it is. That's my feeling. My feeling is I like to see that happen. Well, the fact that he likes words of affirmation as number 1 in theory doesn't really resonate with me because I'm why? Okay, but I will. So I'm cognizant of his feelings that's important to him. Now, that being said, that does not mean that every action he does around this house requires me to now say, oh my gosh, great job. Oh my gosh, great job. That's an all or nothing thinking. It's being mindful. Okay, we've had a conversation. He also doesn't have to walk around this house picking up everything, doing everything around the house. So your feelings can become problematic when you go, well, that's my love language. They're not doing it. Well, is it that they're not doing it at all? Or is it that you feel like they're supposed to do it all the time? Because that's not the case. Okay. And that's why communication. See, communication in your feelings is your number 1. And if you say my person doesn't like to, regardless who it is, mom, dad, husband, wife, doesn't matter. My person doesn't want to communicate feelings. That's when you have to set the boundaries, because then you are going to be hell-bent determined to get them to see it from your perspective, or you're going to stay up till 2:00 in the morning going, what's wrong with them? They're wrong in their thoughts and their feelings. But you can't say that because thoughts and feelings aren't facts. And this is where people really kind of spiral, because they're like, but my feelings are my facts. Again, facts carry 0 emotion. Okay. So let's say you drive a Jeep. That's a fact. You drive a Jeep. That's a fact. You might say, oh, I love my Jeep. Well, that's fine. But the person who gets in your Jeep may be like, oh, nice car, but they're not attached to it. Doesn't make them wrong. And so getting clear in your own feelings, number 1, is going to be key, because you being able to say, I'm okay to have my feelings, and I'm okay that nobody may ever see it from my perspective, because you are the only person on the planet right now having your exact feeling and your exact thought. That's it. Just you. There could be similar feelings and similar thoughts, but not the exact same thought. So this is where you want to start differentiating. And this is why you want to stop doom scrolling on social media and looking in the news and posting a million things on Facebook because you're pissed off because the person at the post office took so long. And oh my God, why did I have to wait? Oh my gosh. Okay. First world problem. Stop. Again, you can only see it from your perspective. So your reality at that time is, I feel frustrated because I'm on my lunch break. I'm frustrated because I'm going to be late getting back from lunch. Meanwhile, that's all you can see it. And you go, oh my God, this freaking people at this post office, why are they so slow? Oh my God, they're so slow. Now you're even more frustrated because you think they're kind of lollygagging. But again, you're seeing it from your perspective. You don't know what the hell they're doing back there. You have no clue. You might think, well, they're moving awfully slow. You don't know what their day has been like. You don't know if their systems have crashed. You don't know if they've been limited in staff. You don't know those things, and you can't see it from anybody else's perspective but your own. Let's give another example. Traffic. You're in traffic. You've had a long day. You're freaking mad. You're supposed to have this appointment at the chiropractor. You're going to either miss it or just be late, or you just don't know. You're agitated. Now, mind you, you're allowed to have your feelings, but process them. instead of feeding it and going, what the hell, man, no, man, I booked this 3 weeks ago and now I'm not going to make it. And okay, can you do anything about it? No, but I'm still pissed off. Okay. Can you do anything about it? No, you can't. So you actually do get to have that choice and say, okay, I'm either going to say, okay, this is a little agitating. I've told you, you put either my podcast on, some other podcast, create a playlist, do something that you have. Accept the fact that there are things that are out of your control. And then when you come in the door, you don't get to dump your feelings on your husband or wife or person. You don't get to do that without asking if they're in a place to receive it. Now your feelings are going to get hurt. Your feelings are going to get hurt because they said, listen, I had a long day and I really can't talk to you about your traffic incident right now. Now you're like, I can't believe that you can't sit there and talk to me after I've been in traffic for 3 hours. Well, what about what they've been through? Why, you know what I'm saying? So that's why the thoughts and feelings go with communication and boundaries. There's never one way that is like the perfect setup. You've got to be able to put all of these little puzzle pieces that I talked to you guys about in play, because it isn't a one hat fits all. And it's accepting the fact that your family may see the vaccine different. Your family may see the mask different. Your family may see politics different. Your family may see birthdays different. Your family may see holidays different. Your people. So, and again, that's why the boundaries are important, because people are in underwear. You should not be walking around trying to change people to see things from the exact perspective and where you see them. You cannot do that. You will be miserable, drained, and lonely, and frustrated as hell. And so that's where that part of the boundaries comes into play, and that we talked about a couple of episodes ago of your non-negotiables and your negotiables. So if my non-negotiable is, my feeling is I'm going to have my cats in my house because I love them and I'm dating you, you're new to the game. Well, first of all, I wouldn't be dating you if you said you didn't want cats in the house. That's a non-negotiable for me. And that's my feelings. But let's say somebody lied to me and said, oh, I love animals. They're fabulous. And then you come to my house. We're dating. This is our first date, second date. You come into the house, you're going to pick me up. And you're like, oh. And I kind of see you being all weird with the cats and feeling some kind of way and getting like, oh my God. I'd be like, I thought you were good with cats. Well, yeah, I mean, I just didn't know that they were all over the house like this. Okay, well, bye. I mean, okay. Like, I'm not going to sit there and try to convince you. I'm going to be like, well, it would have been nice if you would have told me this ahead of time and not like made me feel this way about it. I feel like that was a waste of both of our times. So see, there was the boundary and the communication and the acknowledgement of how I feel and the acknowledgement of how they feel. So that's why you will see that it becomes so problematic in a power struggle when you have people who argue whatever it is because they are not willing to see it from the other person's perspective. And until you can actually have a conversation with someone who has a different perspective without being triggered on such a high level that you're ready to lose your mind and you lose your shit behind it, you're not grown. You're not healing. You're not. So again, I'm not asking you to change your perspective. I'm not asking you to change what it is that you have your feelings and beliefs and thoughts about. However, it is very limited and very narrow-mindedly thinking that your way is the only freaking way. Because it isn't. It isn't. Facts carry zero emotion. Always remember that. So when you catch yourself getting emotional, emotions are just feelings and feelings are not facts. So if you know that that's a trigger, you need to ask yourself, why is that a trigger? If me and you are having a political conversation, now it might be one of your deal breakers, it might be one of my deal breakers, but instead of constant losing sleep, blood pressure going through the roof and all of those things, either be able to both listen and have a conversation and see perspectives. Again, neither one of you have to change, or just say, hey, you know what? We're going to have to agree to disagree. And it's probably a really great idea since you and I are really, and let's say it's not a deal breaker. Let's say it's just something that they believe differently, but it's not really one of your deal breakers. That's where you set the boundary. Hey, listen, let's just not talk politics because you know what? I love you and I do respect that you have a different viewpoint than me, and we're probably never going to see it each other's way. And I feel like we both feel like our feelings are correct for us, and they are. So let's just go get a drink. You know what I mean? So that's why the boundaries come into play. That is the art of acceptance and surrender. It's not surrendering like you're wrong and they're right. It's literally acknowledging that you both are good where you are. Now, if it's a deal breaker, that's where you have to set those boundaries. So first and foremost, you have to even know what your feelings are. That's called self-awareness. That's self-love. And I mean your feelings, not the people-pleasing fawn response. Not walking around trying to please everybody else, trying to validate their feelings, because everybody has different ones. Okay, let's say all of you agree that the milk chocolate's the best and you're the only one that likes dark chocolate. Don't try to go tell everybody, okay, yeah, I mean, I see, like, I'm going to just eat milk chocolate when I'm around you. Why? Eat your dark chocolate. They don't have to like it. They don't have to eat it. So, and I say that because when you are trying to make sure everybody is happy, you are literally trying to, validate everybody's feelings. It's amazing to say, I respect that you feel this way. I feel very differently, and that's okay. Now, that's a lot of work. And it may be, you're going to have, now, what happens when you're that way? You're like, okay, I've done all my road work. I'm good. I'm healing. I can have this conversation. And now you're on the phone with somebody. Maybe it's your parent. Maybe it's somebody else. And they are not going to see it from your perspective. They are, hell no, you're wrong. Why didn't you do this? And okay, boundaries. That is boundaries. You got to realize that you cannot allow that to trigger you. You do not always have to win every fight. 2 + 2 is 50. Yep. Have a great day. It is 50. I'm not going to sit there and tell you it's 4 over and over again. We're not going to do that game. 2 + 2 is 50. Yep. I'm not saying be a dick about it, but I'm saying don't, say it once or twice. No, 2 + 2 is 4. See, look, this is why. Certain people are never going to see that that's 4. They're going to think it's 50 all the way across the board. So that's why your feelings start to get irritated and your thoughts start to get irritated, because you're like, this person is an idiot. How can they not see this? But why are you beating your head up against the wall? That's a control mechanism. Okay. So yes, your vibe attracts your tribe. Yes, you should definitely vibe with the people who think very similar to you and they vibe with you. That's your core group. However, if you are not willing to look at it and just see another perspective, you're limiting yourself. You are limiting yourself. Okay. Yeah, I have my beliefs on how I do things. Works for me. Gonna work for everybody else? No, might not even work for people in my family. Works for me. So we talk about it. We know where the compromise is. But before you can even know what the compromise is, you have to know how you feel. You have to identify what your feelings and your thoughts are. Sit with them. And that's where the limited beliefs come into play. Because you're like, well, do I really believe fill in the blank? Man, maybe I've been thinking I feel it. I mean, do I? So that's why the self-work is so important. Because when you start to get really confident in your own thoughts and your own feelings for yourself, those are perspectives, not facts, but they are your perspectives. When you start to get in that space, then other people can't trigger you as badly, because you'll be like, wow, okay. But remember, you're good in your convictions. Very often you get triggered and you go off the deep end and you want to win and you want to be the loudest and you want to finish the fastest and you want to finish the last. You are doing that because you're really not comfortable or even have been able to identify your convictions as just being yours. Okay. And so that's the important part. So the first step is to identify what your feelings are. Happy is not an emotion. Anger is not an emotion. They're definers or describers. So anger comes from fear, frustration, and hurt. Happiness can be a multitude of things for a multitude of people. Inner peace is a foundation to that. And the inner peace is going to be healing your traumas, therapy, and mindful coaching. And, my link's in the bio. You can do this. You can work with me or you can work with anybody that you want, just as long as you're working with somebody, not trying to just read 1 or 2 self-help books and being like, okay, got this. Like no, that's not a thing. So again, it doesn't have to be me. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. It can be just somebody. But because if not, you are going to stay stuck in this little box. And that's why you don't always want to feel the tragedy or the trauma, the feelings that were related to the trauma. Well, if you're not going to feel it, you're not going to heal it. Because then if you're not feeling it and you haven't healed it, you're going to look for other people to validate your feelings, but you don't even really know what your feelings are because you haven't even sat with them. They're scary. It requires vulnerability. It requires self-awareness. It requires time alone. It requires you being okay with what your feelings are, even if nobody else is around you or can understand them. And so understanding that when you do that, not only will you be more empathetic to people, you will be able to release control, in turn giving you more power and control over your life. Also giving you the peace and space to be able to be around other people who may think differently. Again, not the deal breakers. Like for me, racism, homophobia, that's not good. And I'm not really going to rock with you. You know what I mean? Like we're good. You're over there, but it's just not my thing. So I really wouldn't be in a situation like that. But I'm not just going to sit here and lose sleep about why Tiffany can't see my perspective. I will educate you if you need it or if you want it or if you want to have a conversation about it. But I'm not going to sit there and lose sleep over myself and my convictions to try to sway. Now, that being said, you guys know that I do a lot of community work. I'll do stuff with not just local community. I'm thinking more globally. Like I do a lot of animal rescue stuff. Animals are my jam. A lot of people say you spend a lot of time doing animal stuff, or you spend a lot of time doing energy work, or you spend a lot of time hugging trees. Yes, that works for me. You don't have to get down with it. There's people who do different things. That's why you want to find something that you feel strong about and do something about it. Like put your education out there, put something there, make a difference. You don't get to bitch and complain and then just sit around and bitch and complain. Nope. And you say, well, I'm just one person. Write a letter to your senator, volunteer somewhere, help somebody do something, start tutoring. Ask yourself what is good for you. And then what you do is you're showing people, because the people that you want to help will come. That's the whole building the community thing. And that is how you start to get really close with your community. Because very often you can be around a lot of people and feel alone and feel lonely because you're not clear with how you even feel. And that's where your anxieties and phobias come into play. And, you're allowed your insecurities. You're allowed your feelings. Sit with them, feel them. The other side of that is be aware that everybody else has their own feelings and everybody else has their own thoughts. And it's allowing yourself to be very clear that feelings and thoughts aren't facts. They are perceptions and they are very real to you. And that's where you have got to incorporate communication. Communication and understanding that just because somebody does something different doesn't mean that they don't love you. It just means that they're not doing it the way you want to do it. And then you have to say, is this one of my non-negotiables? If it's not one of your non-negotiables and it's negotiable, then you got to breathe a little bit. Have a conversation about it. It's not always about the person meeting you where you are. Sometimes you got to meet them where they are and be able to understand. Sometimes people don't even understand their feelings. So now you want them to understand your feelings, but hell, they don't even know how they're emotionally unavailable. So there's a whole complex that goes on in here. So when you are sitting with your feelings, I really want you to say, are my feelings, or are they my insecurities, which by the way, are feelings? And then where does that come from? Why do I feel the need to make sure everybody is kind of doing it my way? Where is that control center? Control is based on fear. Control never comes from a good place. It comes from a place of fear. Fear of not having control over this. Fear of not having control over that. Losing a job. Losing this. It's a fear center. And fear is an emotion, but it's not a fact. Fear is false evidence appearing real. Fear is not fact. Fear is an emotion that is not fact, even though it feels like a fact. And I'm not invalidating you. I have tons of fears in my life, over the period of time. And I've worked through them and continue to work daily on them, and you will. But understanding that when you have those feelings, when you get caught up in them, and let's say it's the feeling of anxiety and the feeling of stress and the feeling of negativity, it's not real. It's not a fact. It's a real in that moment. It's not a fact. So when you feel, oh my God, I'm so defeated, I'm so terrible, I'm so awful, I'm so low, sit with it and say, okay, I'm going to be here for a minute, but I know that this is not fact. Even though it feels factual, it's not a fact. Okay. So yes, it is a process and it is going to be a lifelong process. But when you can understand that a situation is going to happen, good, bad, and different, it's just happening. And then we attach what we feel with it, our worries, our concerns, our joy. And they are very valid and real to us. Just remember, be very, very, very careful in the expectation of everybody around you has to see and feel it the same way. Because that, my friends, I promise you, will leave you feeling stressed, will leave you sad, will feel lonely. And all around, it's just not going to be a good setup for you. But first and foremost, your homework tonight is get very clear what your feelings even are. Sit with them, feel them. Oh, it's scary. Ooh, it's vulnerability. But I promise you that that's the best foundation to start. So with that being said, have an amazing week. Get very close and very in touch with your feelings.
Check it out.